How can you determine what the 25 most iconic cards are of the first 25 years of the century? I'm going to tell you right now. This is not a normal episode of the basketball card podcast. This is not a normal episode of Across the Hobby. This is going to be a discussion about the 25 and 25 series, which includes the 25 in 25 survey that just released just today. Over 40 people have already taken it. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be awesome. And it's going to be a ton of people who are going to take it. Way more than 40. Certainly hundreds of people will be taking the survey. And I'm really, like I said, really excited about it. Okay, so in front of you, you see my account on Instagram. I know you don't care about that. But the reason that I'm showing you that is if you click here, you can see this 25 and 25 survey link here. So go to my account at the Real 27 Guy. Then go to the 25 and 25 survey. What is the point of the survey? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what we went through to make this survey. We're going to talk about why this is important. And I think that this should be really interesting. I hope it's interesting. We're a minute and 10 seconds in. I probably lost already 80% of you guys. But for those of you who are still here, I promise this is going to be interesting. Okay. So the 25 and 25, you can see the first page here. It's the 25 and 25 survey, the most iconic sports cards of the 21st century. You can see the logo that we have, and then you click begin survey. And when you do that, you're going to see all of these instructions, okay? I was on today with the guys from Sports Card Nonsense. I talked about this with Jeremy Lee on the Sports Cards live show. And I'm guessing that there's still a lot of questions, and I'm guessing not everybody saw that. So let's talk about this briefly. At the very top, you can see that there is a definition for iconic, and this is very important. So we're going to start with that. Being iconic means being widely recognized and admired, often symbolizing a particular era, group, or concept. It signifies a person or thing that is influential, representative, and revered. This list that we're putting together is not the best 25 cards of the century. It is not the top cards of the century. It is the most iconic. And that is why that definition is front and center right at the top. If you don't know what the definition is, go read it and reread it and reread it. I feel like I had a pretty good grasp of it at the beginning. I still, every time I read it, go, oh yeah, I need to remember that. The thing that really stands out to me is that this isn't your favorite, right? It says admired, symbolizing a particular era, group, or concept. So as you think about that, what are the cards of the first 25 years in the hobby that are iconic? We're on a mission to create a ranked list of the 25 most iconic sports cards of the century. So no non-sports, no TCG or anything like that. And that includes obviously 2000 to today. Side note real quick, you may not have realized this before, but we're over 25 years into the century because the century began on January 1st, 2000. So the 25th year ended December 31st, 2024. So we are actually in the 26th year of the century at this point. Please review all instructions before filling out your ballot. Again, you can all take this. You can go click on my Instagram. You can go take this right now. This thing took flipping forever to put together. So look, just scroll down through here. There's a million cards down here. We're going to talk about them in just a sec. We're going to go through them in just a sec. All right. Please view all cards before ranking the 25 cards you feel are most iconic. Please do not just go start clicking. You will realize immediately, oh, shoot, I should have waited. After looking at all the cards, determine which you believe is the number one most iconic. Click the card, then click on the card you believe is number two. Continue until you've chosen and ranked the 25 cards you believe are the most iconic sports cards of the century. It may be helpful to open a note on your phone or an Excel file on your computer or a Word doc to track and make selections. For me, this is helpful because you can just move lines, move rows in Excel, and that's what I like to do. Be sure to enter your information at the bottom of the survey and then hit submit. There's some frequently asked questions here, like, for example, if the cards are in order by sport and by year, if a card has a parallel or a variation or multiples, you'll see the squares have the cards as many as 5 copies of the card within one square. We didn't do more than that because we didn't want it to take up or for it to not be really easily visible. You can unclick selections if you make a mistake. So if you choose one, you can go ahead and unclick it. gem rate population data. You can look at this if you want to know anything about the population of the card. Gem rate and I have sort of come together in partnership on this. I'm grateful for their support on this. And GemRate's awesome. I use GemRate for a ton of my content. If you've been watching me, you probably already know that. And I love what GemRate does and how it basically unlocks a lot of data immediately at my fingertips. And seriously, I love GemRate. So if you have any questions about the pop count data or any of that other stuff, go click on that link. You can take the survey. You can take as long as you want to, but the deadline is June 10th, 2025. At that point, at the end of the day, June 10th, 2025, you will no longer have a chance to take this. It only takes you 15 or 20 minutes, so I just recommend doing it soon. Only surveys with all 25 choices made will count towards the final countdown list. Other notes about the process. There's a link here. If you click, you are going to find a lot of discussion around the process. A lot of discussion. It is long. It will take you a while to go through it. I would recommend it if you have questions. I'm going to cover some of that here in just a minute. And then we will share the results as I typically do in typical countdown fashion, one card at a time over the course of 25 days. And it will begin somewhere around the end of June, somewhere around the beginning of July, somewhere in there. All right. So, the next place that I want to go is I'm going to sort of scroll through and just show you guys. The first 30-ish cards are baseball. And then like the next 26 or 27 cards are basketball. And then, or maybe 28 or 29 cards are basketball. And then you've got 27 or 26 or 27 football cards. Then you've got 3 golf cards, 10 hockey cards, 4 or 5 racing cards. Then you've got 11 or 12 soccer cards, some tennis, some WNBA, some wrestling, and some UFC. And it's about 135 cards total that are in the survey. So you're probably wondering, how did we choose these cards? How did we get these cards to be part of the survey? And how did we make sure that we didn't miss anything that somebody may want to choose for their group of 25? Well, we've already gotten, like I said, about 40 responses, and the 40 responses, about maybe 20% of them have cards that people think that we missed. One person felt like we should have included 4 different cards from 2012 Prism basketball that we didn't include. One person thought that we didn't include various Shohei Ohtani cards that we should have included. One person thought that there were some Mahomes cards that we should have included. And another person thought that if we included the national treasures of certain football cards, we should have also included the Prism cards of those same players so that it would be fair across player. These are all good notes and all really well thought out. And we could have included a million more cards. The problem with that is you want to balance with a survey like this, having all of the cards that somebody may really want to choose, all of them that really have a good chance to make it to the top 25, but you don't want to have so many that it becomes like impossible to fill this out. I don't have a way to connect this to like PSA or Beckett's database, right? I just don't. I don't have a way to I had to create all of this. I had to go find images for all these cards. I had to put them out in there in a way that you could easily tell what they are. This took forever, guys. This took forever. And so, as you think about why would I do this? I love this sort of stuff. I think lists like this are really important. And as I talked to Ryan from GemRate, he felt the same way, right? Lists like this in a moment really commemorate or create a moment in time where you can look at the list and you can say, that is what the hobby thought as of that moment. Again, the word iconic doesn't represent your favorite cards. It represents what you believe the hobby views is important and significant to a sport or to a play or to the hobby. And so this took a ton of work putting this together. So let's talk about how we came up with these 135 cards. So the first step in this was to identify people who are experts in each sport. So in baseball, I reached out to David Ratliff. His name is Signed and Slabbed on Instagram. In basketball, we'd actually already done an iconic list from about 5 or 6 months ago in basketball, where we had 20, 25, I can't remember the exact number, really smart collectors write in what they believed without options the 25 most iconic basketball cards were. I went through all the brain damage of figuring out like how to average those lists, and we already had a group of 25. So that was our starting place for basketball. For football, we utilized Ty Nethercott. Ty, you know him as he's from Sports Card Investor. He's on Drummond Card Collector on Instagram, although he hasn't been super active there these days. He's one of the smartest card guys I know. And so he was our starting place for football. And then for soccer, we used LAFC Gunnar, who's one of the biggest soccer collectors out there. Great perspective from him. Oh, I forgot hockey. Hockey came from my good friend Jeremy Lee. He chose all 10 of these cards. That was the starting place, though. I already told you about soccer. Tennis, we reached, that Ty from Sports Card Investor also helped with that. WNBA was Black Griffin Cards and Kyle Collects. Both of them gave me their lists independently, and they had great overlap. Wrestling was Drake's PC. And then UFC was, I can't remember how you say his name. It has KC in it, but super knowledgeable UFC guy. And he gave me these cards. And so that's what the starting place was for the lists. But that's not good enough, because even though those guys are experts, there might be a weak spot, right? So at that point, then after collecting all of those cards, I basically came in and created a survey, put everything in order, and there were about 100 cards total. I sent that to 5 people who I feel like know the hobby at large really well. And I said, and when I say at large, I mean like they don't just specialize in one sport, like they know the various sports really well. And when I did that, they gave me about 15 or 20 more cards that needed to be added. And in every case, we sort of looked at it, we debated about them, and we said, okay, these cards need to be included, or no, they don't. And in most cases, we just included the cards because they brought me great cards that needed to be included. Iconic cards, again, not good cards, but iconic cards that represent something. After we did that totally exhaustive search, we then sent the whole list in picture form out to the whole community. And we said, what do you think? Is there anything missing here? And over the course of 24 hours, people had the chance to write in whether anything was missing. We ended up choosing 8 or 9 cards from all of those people who looked. We had something like 70 people. No, it was more than that. We had something like 150 people who looked, 70 people who responded, and there were like 10 different cards that were included. Most of the responses were, everything is here. This is great. This is great. This is awesome. I'm excited to do this, that sort of thing. But then there were like 8 or 9 or 10 people or cards that we felt like should be added. One of them was this Babe Ruth Tools of the Trade card right here. There were just cards where we sort of looked at it and we went, well, that makes sense. This one right here, this Mariners, the 2020 Project 2020 card from Ken Griffey Jr., that was one of them that the baseball guys didn't originally think about. And so when that was mentioned, we went with it. Oh, I forgot to mention with baseball. At one point with Signed in Slab, I couldn't get a hold of him one day. So I reached out to Scotty B Cards, who had 4 or 5 cards that he wanted to add. And so I ended up taking Scotty B Cards as well as Signed in Slab, put them all together. And that's why baseball ended up being a little bit more than basketball and football, which is totally fine. I don't think it really influences anything. Somebody added this Mahomes Select or XRC late. And again, hockey, nobody else added anything. I had 2 or 3 really smart hockey guys look at it after Jeremy, but they were all like, nope, this is good. There were some cards that people debated about, but we really realized that none of those cards had a chance to make the final list. And frankly, a lot of these cards don't have a chance to make the final list. I did a preliminary aggregate vote across all the data averaging, and the list looked very similar to what I thought it would look like. I just think that there are a lot of cards on here that will receive some votes, but to get into that top 25, and this is what the purpose of the survey is, guys, to get into the top 25, you need to make a mark across the hobby, right? You have to be iconic across the hobby. So where some cards might be recognizable or important for a specific group of people, that's not necessarily what iconic means. And so So yeah, those are your cards. So let's just scroll through them again real quick. The thing that's really interesting is you look at these again in order is if you were around in the early 2000s, you remember all three of these big cards. The big Pujols, the big Ichiro, and then the duel of the two. You remember those because this is everything that everybody talked about in 2001. And if you were around when the absolute tools of the trade Babe Ruth card came out, then you probably remember that story. But a lot of other cards, like, a lot of them, you basically had to be there. You might not have heard anything about any of these cards for years unless you've really been paying attention. This Alex Gordon is probably the greatest example of that. This was the talk of the hobby for multiple months. But if you have only been around for 10 years or so, you might not know what this card is. I don't want to introduce any bias in terms of which cards should make it and which shouldn't, so I'm not going to opine on that. But you'll notice all these ones that have like 5 cards, these are all Bowman Chrome and Topps Chrome with all of their parallels. But where there's cards like that, there's also cards like this Shohei Ohtani, where you have the logo man, you have the autograph, and you have a moment that was really important, not only for the sport, but a moment that was really important for Topps. How does that card compare in terms of how iconic it is to the Project 2020 Ken Griffey Jr.? A lot of people are going to remember this card. A lot of people own this card, but this was an over $1 million card that most people wouldn't have ever dreamed of buying, but it represents an important moment. That patch is actually from that important jersey. How does that compare to the Skeens that got bought by Dick's Sporting Goods? Here you'll see something that's really interesting. In some cases, in most cases, I would say you can put the Topps with the Topps Chrome on a list like this, but not in this case. The draft suit LeBron is very different than the Chrome LeBron, and so we've got those in 2 different places. And then we come to one of the most interesting parts of the survey, which is that there are not just parallels, but there are variations that are included in the same spot. Why is this LeBron Logoman auto in the same place as this LeBron patch auto and this LeBron card are? They don't have the same pictures. They're not the same card. Why are they in the same place? Because this Ultimate LeBron is the base. This patch variation has the same number on the back of it. It is a variation of this card. And what I would argue is the most valuable basketball card in the world is a variation of both of them. They have to go on the same spot because they have the same number and they are variations of each other. The Michael Jordan Logoman auto, the most expensive Jordan card that's ever sold, is one of only 2 cards of his that makes it on the list. That and this one right here. There's not another standalone MJ. Nobody suggested even that we put like the 2001 Chrome or the 2002 Chrome or some of those other ones. The Logomania from 02, I think finished like 26th, 27th, or 28th on the original 25 and 25 basketball list. So it did almost make this, but it didn't make it. And there are 3 of those anyway, so I felt kind of strange about it just showing up as far as like one spot goes. Nat's dual logo man here is an interesting card. Again, I don't want to introduce bias, so I'm not going to talk too much about him. Here's another situation where you have a variation, the Steph Curry logo man auto and the NT. Some people would say that the logo man auto is one of the most iconic cards because it's Steph's biggest card. But a lot of other people don't even know what it is, and it doesn't stand for something that's iconic to them. Had a conversation with Josh Adams and Jeremy Lee the other day over on Jeremy's channel, where I asked Josh, because he told me something previously about the 1914 Babe Ruth card, which most of you who are listening to this probably don't even know what it is, right? Or maybe you do. Maybe you've seen it. Maybe you know all about it. Maybe we have some more vintage listeners to this. I just wouldn't expect so because this is a modern list. But I asked him, I was like, what did you say to me about that? Like, what did you think about that 1914 Babe Ruth? Can you remind me? And he said, that's one of the biggest cards ever. I think it's one of the top 3 most iconic cards in the hobby. And then Jeremy's reply was, but I don't even know what it looks like off the top of my head. And this represents 2 thoughts about what being iconic is. Is something iconic just because it's worth a lot? Is something iconic because you can think of the image right off the top of your head? Or does the fact that it represents the most valuable thing just make it iconic? You can read the definition and decide for yourself. But to me, the reason that we didn't include the names of these cards below, we want you to have to recognize that card. If you don't, it doesn't seem like that card should be iconic. At least it doesn't seem like it should go on your list. You shouldn't have to read what the card is to determine that it is iconic. All right. Go through the rest of the basketball stuff. This LeBron was a late ad. There's so many people who were like, you've got to have kabooms on this list. Kabooms are the set of the era. Here's the interesting thing. None of them were giving similar cards. Very few people, like they were all throwing out different cards. There were like 3 different Steph Curry cards that people put out there and said, hey, you should include this card on the list. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You guys love Kaboom. But like you haven't determined yet which are the most iconic cards from those inserts, from those years of inserts. And that's problematic. Some people are like, it's got to be the 2018 Kobe Gold. And other people are like, no, it's got to be this year of LeBron James. And other people, like, they were all over the place. And that's for basketball and football. I probably had 10 different kabooms mentioned, but very few of them were mentioned more than once. This LeBron was the only one in basketball that was mentioned more than once. This Kobe was a late add and is only the 3rd Kobe on the list, interestingly. He's got iconic cards, but most of them are from the 90s. This triple autograph hasn't even been pulled yet. I had a couple people tell me that we shouldn't include it because it's not going to be iconic in the future. That's what they said. But the hullabaloo around this card just made me feel like it has to go on the list. And so we put it there. When you get to football, you can see real quick, you get 3 Tom Brady's right out the gate. And then you've got a couple more Brady's later on in the list. You've got a bunch of Mahomes, a bunch of Brady. You also have a bunch of these rookies in the early to mid 2000s that maybe some people have forgotten. But if you are a fan of the game, you know, like they're some of the biggest players of all time. A bunch of prisms, a bunch of their parallels that are obviously associated with them, and then some huge NT cards too. One really, like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier, one person who I thought was really smart said, and it was after we already went live, hey, if you've got an NT and a prism for some players, shouldn't you do the same thing for others? Because for some of these guys like Lamar Jackson, we didn't put the prism in. That was more a function of how many total made the list. But again, I can see that. That's a good case. That's a good point. I don't think the Lamar is going to make it in any case. I could be wrong. I shouldn't introduce bias. Forget that I said that. 3 hockey cards, or sorry, 3 golf cards, all Tiger Woods, 10 hockey cards, all from Jeremy. Love Jeremy's list here. Jeremy's obviously somebody who's a historian in the world of hockey cards. We have 3 F1 cards and then a bunch of soccer cards, 10 or 11 soccer cards. Really interesting to see how soccer does. Really interested to see how all the sports do, honestly. All right, and then we get down to tennis, get to WNBA, get to wrestling, get to UFC. And then when you get to the very end, you get the chance to write your name, your Instagram if you want to, your email for purposes of receiving updates about the survey, where you heard about the list. And then if you want a chance to win a book that will be produced at the conclusion of the content of the series, obviously we're not going to produce the book as we're counting the cards down, then you can write the word yes in that second to last box. And then if there's a card that you would have chosen on your list that wasn't on here, please let us know. Like I said, I've already had a few people who have done that. And I think I totally get that. I think that makes sense. But again, when somebody's like, hey, you should put these 5 other 2012 Prism cards on there, there's just no way, in my opinion, I like nobody loves 2012 Prism as much as I do, but like, I don't think you can say, hey, I shouldn't tell you what you should think. You might want so many other cards. There might be 10,000 cards that we could have put on this list. We did the best that we could. I promise you that. I don't even know how many hours putting this together, guys. This took forever. But I'm really excited to see where it goes, because what we're going to do is after all of this comes in, we're going to take the lists. We're going to average them. There are 2 different groups of lists. There is a list for people who are employed within the hobby, or content creators within the hobby. Their lists will make up half the vote. And then there is a list of people who are collectors, and their list will make up half the vote. We'll take both halves, we'll average them, and we'll average everything within them. And how we do that is actually super interesting, and I'm happy to tell you more about that. But that's actually in the notes if you want to go look back at the first page, or look back. In fact, I'll show you real quick. If you want to see that, come back to the top and click on other notes about the process. Click on that. You can see a lot of things that I was telling you guys about earlier. And then this is how the points are assigned. You can walk through how that works. It's pretty interesting. think like the way that we've put this together is super interesting. And I think you guys are going to look at this and go, that was a lot of fun. It was a great thought exercise. I'm really glad that I did it. And that was really hard. I did have a friend today message me and say, hey, that took me almost an hour. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry that took you so long. He's just like, it's just really hard. It's hard to put one card against the next. For me, it took about 10, maybe 12 minutes. All I did is I sort of scrolled down and I said, okay, what's number one? And I found it and I clicked it. What's number two? And then I had cards in my mind of like, okay, what are going to make up the rest of the top 25? Because you have to go through it like 6 or 7 times before you really understand what's actually on it. And at that point, you can have in your mind what you're going to put on it. And then, like I said, put it into Excel, just sort the numbers of the cards back and forth, and you'll be able to get there a lot quicker. All right. I think that things like this are important because they give us an idea of what the community thinks as a whole. Like I said, this is a lot of effort. And so that's the reason why other people, I think, don't do stuff like this. Also, finding a survey software that does this was really pretty difficult. There are not a lot of pieces of survey software that do what this does. It might seem rudimentary or simple. There are not a lot of options out there to do things like this. We talked about the point system. We talked about the purpose. We talked about the process. We talked about we talked about a lot of it. I want to thank again GemRate again for their help with all of this. The link that you go to where you're able to see that pop count data is super interesting. I really do spend a lot of time in GemRate, and they are super helpful, and I'm grateful for their support on this project. All right, guys, we could talk about this all day and all night. But the last thing is, again, go back to my Instagram, again, at the Real 27 guy. Click right here on this Linktree link, and you're going to see right down below, it says 25 and 25 survey. Start there, get to the main page. After you get to the main page, click begin survey. Look through the notes. After you look through the notes, you're going to come down here and you're going to start choosing cards, and you're going to pick 1 to 25. And then when you get to the end, hit submit after filling in your information, and that's it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave questions here on YouTube. Feel free to ask via DM on Instagram at the Real 27 guy. Whatever you guys have, I'm happy to answer it. This took a little bit longer than usual. I've never been great brevity. I try, guys. I try to be short, but man, it is not easy. All right, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the survey. I hope you guys have a lot of fun. And until next time, happy collecting.